Hello, and welcome to Hard Hat Heroines, project highlights from women in construction, with your hosts, Eve and Sarah. Right, here we are, Hard Hat Heroines, episode 3. We've got Ozzy joining us alongside Sarah. You two know each other quite well. That's why you're huddled in together for episode 3. Let's hear it. What's the Sarah and Ozzy origin story?
My version is the Natural History Museum. I don't think we worked on anything before then. Sarah was the PM. I was an architectural assistant. I think I was on month 6 of graduating from university. I had a really fantastic manager at the time as well, Joe. And then Joe, Sarah, and I just became this lovely trinity, even to this day. Sarah, I vividly remember, just was so different to everyone else at Mace. And in a brilliant and fantastic way. I just remember thinking, I want to be like her. She doesn't give a fuck in a good way. And I was like, I want to be like her. And I think, especially in any corporate, it's very cookie cutter. Sarah was not that. Years later, still a friendship. I'm very, very grateful to have worked on natural history with Sarah.
Okay, let's ask Sarah a quick question. How is it that you just don't give a fuck? Where does that come from?
I think that's a misconception. I think I do really give a fuck. I deeply care. I get very anxious sometimes around certain things that happen or don't happen and reflect very heavily. What I don't give a fuck about is the small stuff. We don't need to care about that. That's somebody else's problem. I particularly don't care for office politics. My experience of Mace has always been very positive. I've liked the people a lot.
And I don't know if you've already spoken about it before, but I think it was the reason you left Mace, or at least what pushed you to do it. And so many people just don't have the courage or the care to want to change things and make it better. So yeah, forever an inspiration.
That's awesome. And the 3 of us are ex-Mace, although my tenure, I'd say, is a bit shorter than you guys, and I was Mace Interiors. We've got here an image of Ozzy, if you'd like to speak to a little bit to kind of where you're at this moment in your career and what's happened for you.
I'm unsure of the actual date because I guess when you're unemployed, all days kind of blend into the same.
It's Friday.
As of last week, 20th of September, ISG, my former employer, went into administration. And it was as crazy as overnight. And it was as crazy as us finding out via the news as opposed to our emails. And so it has been a bit of a whirlwind. I posted on LinkedIn, Ever the Optimist. And I am trying to see what lemonade comes out of the lemons that life has given me this week. But yeah, so I'm unemployed for the first time in my life and really excited to see what happens next. And one thing, our industry is very backwards in many ways, but I think that's exciting because that obviously means there's so much opportunity to improve things. So I've cast the net wide to my network and seeing where I land.
Amazing. And so you're a design manager. You have quite a strong interest in sustainability, right?
Yes, design management. Now that I've been talking to friends and colleagues in the industry, it's such an interesting job role because from each company, it has a different meaning. To me, in my day role at ISG, it was very much what Mace would see as a package manager. You'd lead the packages from curing them through to handing over the project. Sustainability interest, I like to think I speak on behalf of everyone. It's an integral value. We have to be sustainable and we have to care. It's not just a brand target. And unfortunately, it is very often a tick box supporting function to the projects. I do believe the delivery team need to have it more integral to their role. I would love to see that more in the future. Sustainability is really important to me and many people.
I completely agree. I consider myself a bit of a greenie, but I saw the optimist coming out when you said, I hope that everyone would feel that sustainability is very important. Unfortunately, I don't think that's probably the case for our industry today. I think we're moving in the right direction.
I'm more cynical on it. We want to do it, but all of a sudden we just rolled back to the concrete RC frame.
Yeah.
Surprise. not.
A lot comes back to early collaboration with subcontractors, that design rolling out to subcontractors earlier and they're being able to feed back in. Then there's a question mark around them being properly compensated for that time as well, not having a massive expectation on subbies to give loads of information and design input up front, but then they maybe don't get the work. Obviously, our thing is tendering, and I think that there's a whole thing around early engagement with suppliers and getting that piece right that needs to be moved way back in the process. So you're not having that, we're already on site, we can't just change this to this because it's going to cause havoc with the design, and maybe meet some of those deliverables a lot better. But the current way we're tendering doesn't allow for that. We're not properly compensating. Sometimes we are, obviously, with early engagement with design, but there needs to be a whole shake up around that and a much more collaborative approach.
Are you able to talk a little bit more around ISG? Because I think there's been rumours of it not, let's be honest, construction from a macro perspective is having a very difficult year. But like, was it out of the blue?
Yeah, and we were saying earlier, I think it was on a BBC Money podcast or something, they described it as a slow car crash. I thought that was perfect because we've had rumours for over a year. Always had our directors reassure us that it's all okay. I think we believe them, and I don't think anyone was lying to the team. I don't think there was anything shady going on. And then earlier this year, we found out we were getting bought out. The sale dragged on for months and months and months and months. And what I think is the disappointing thing is that, unfortunately, ISG staff found out via the Construction Inquirer before our company itself. I think that is the only thing they could have done better in terms of their employees. The actual administration was a car crash in the sense it was quick, sudden. I don't think anyone knew what was going on. And yeah, some directors I've worked with have been in the company for 25 years. They've dedicated their lives to ISG. I don't think they were expecting it. I don't think they knew what was happening at the board level. Zoe Price sent an email saying it got leaked to the press.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that that was the better way to go about everything. But yeah.
I don't know what your view on it has been, an employee from an outsider. I felt she was more human than I would imagine other CEOs could send. All my experience, I've been in organizations where they've gone through rounds of redundancies, very different, but when the business has not been doing well. And the tone and the comms was her hand was like, you know, obviously if her hand was leaked, her hand was kind of forced. I think if it did happen, it's a really shitty way for for internal teams to find out. I felt she had a human tone in that email.
It almost felt, this is all I have left, this is me, I have nothing to lose. I think ISG owed a subcontractor money and they decided to take ISG to court, which is what pushed
the last bit.
Apparently that was the last domino to force ISG to go into administration. What I'm also intrigued about is the South African buyer came out and said he was committed to buying the company. And I don't know what went wrong there. I don't know if the financial situation wasn't described to be what it actually was. All I know that it is really, really sad. I interviewed 3 times to join ISG, and that was for a reason. I really did believe that they would be the pioneers in innovation. I've never seen such young people on site and such diverse people on site. So it is a real loss of what I think ISG had the potential to be. But it's looking like it might be, structure tone might be ISG 2.0 at this rate. Also, Matt Blowers, our former CEO, he worked, I believe he worked his way up through the ranks through assistant site manager to CEO. I've emailed with him once or twice and I thought that's amazing, isn't it? For a CEO to respond.
To have that credibility.
He was definitely really respected and admired by people in the company. He's now at Structure Tone and it's exciting for Structure Tone. I believe they're predominantly a US-based business. I'm sure loads of ISG people will be swooped up by them.
But I did see on LinkedIn a lot of people coming out and saying, I've worked with the most amazing people that I've worked with in my career. I can't believe the relationships I've built. You kind of expect that following something like this, but the post that I saw, it just seemed this very kind of genuine, like, this was amazing and I'm really sorry that it's gone.
I was on a live project at ISG, which made me think, surely we're fine. This project will go on. I do remember in one of the meetings we had with everyone to give an update, I remember thinking, what happens if the sale doesn't go through? And someone said, well, Cathexis, our owners, will have to inject more money into us. I'm not an accountant, I don't know how numbers work, but clearly it didn't make sense to inject money, even if it was just a fit out, to keep that going. But yeah, none of us believed it would happen. The jewel in the crown. Dare I say, ISG fit out was the jewel in the crown for fit out across the board. They didn't initially file for administration. So I was thinking, okay, that makes sense. He just wants to keep fit out, fine. But that wasn't the case.
I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot, and I saw this post that you put up saying, please hire me.
I found it liberating to be like, okay, I'm not employed by anyone. I don't owe anything to anyone. I don't believe in work-life split. I want my personality to come through at work. I just love a seamless blend. I thought this was my opportunity to put all my cards on the table and say, this is who I am, what I like, what I'm good at. Hire me for me. It was really sweet, the feedback I got.
Like out of your control as well. There's nothing you could have done. Like you're already working on a project at the time. Like, it was good. As you say, I've worked with you, so I know you well. It's an opportunity.
Exactly.
And you've done some great work. Exactly. Share it, and you've taken it.
There was a part of me as well being like, I don't want to fight my former colleagues for the same role. Everyone's kind of flocking to Mace, Overbury, Scan. I was like, I don't want to fight for the same design manager role. I thought, let me go wide and see what happens.
All right, tell us a bit about this project.
This is linked to ISG.
Yeah.
So at Mace, one of the superstars was Lee Hutchinson, and he was incredible. He was young, dynamic, and coming to project director. He was brilliant. Everything you want in a project director. And then he was like, I'm going to ISG. He's going to head up a whole division. So he went over to ISG. The project got taken away from him and hived off into another aspect. It became a Mace integrated team with different elements within Mace. That's how we met.
Dippy the dinosaur united us.
Yeah. And
Dippy.
Let's be honest, it's a kick-ass project.
Yeah.
And for people who are listening, not watching, Dippy, what kind of dinosaur is he?
It's a Diplodocus dinosaur.
Oh, that's very good.
Dinosaur.
Very good.
Dippy the Diplodocus dinosaur is a huge dinosaur outside the Natural History Museum. And what was Dippy made from? Yeah,
I feel like you went through the options.
Yeah,
I feel like it's definitely solid gold.
It was bronze. It was solid bronze. It was solid bronze initially.
To paper mache.
I can imagine that VE process would have been interesting.
He got VE'd.
Dippy got VE'd.
Value engineered. That can be the title.
Oh my goodness. Who doesn't love value engineering? Most of us probably don't really enjoy it, to be honest.
It was really interesting that hearing how they were going to do it, working with the scientists around with it, like how they were going to cast. Fairness Natural History Museum, they were very keen to be representative of the real thing. I remember one of the scientists talking around like, how are we going to cast these things? And it was like a cast of a cast. To get it, even though Dippy got VE'd, he is representative of the original mold.
That's incredible. So those would be molds taken from an actual dinosaur. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So it did. Initially, it was just a buildability review, a design assessment and a buildability review. Yeah. And that was done. It was an incredible scheme, but over budget. So how can you work with us to come up with something more affordable?
I think it started being affordable, but then the more we delved into it, it also started becoming, well, is this what you want? And that's the bit that I found quite interesting. The original design was absolutely stunning, but it's very different to what it actually ended up becoming. And so myself and Joe were part of the design team, and we worked through different options, essentially the feasibility report. And yeah, scope creep always happens, and it grew into more and more work.
It was a rare one as well. This was a really nice Mace project actually, because it was integrated like Mace design, PM, construction, and Mace QS. I felt like it was a little assembled dream team, and everyone was like, this is amazing, a once in a lifetime opportunity. How can we be sympathetic to the original designs, look at scope? I'll never forget, we had the timeframes on the feasibility were unbelievably tight, almost to the point of being stupid. Ozzy's already mentioned work life. Anyway, I rocked up on a Monday morning, and Ozzy had been in the office all weekend. She hid what we're looking at now. People can't see it. It's Dippy, this Diplodocus dinosaur, surrounded by some ferns outside the Waterhouse, which is the Natural History Museum. And what is so interesting about this levels, and I think we've got another image coming, but the levels in this project, we're dealing with 3 levels. Ozzy made a model of this area with the dinosaur, and you put the dinosaur, which I loved. And this is still in the project director's office. She had done this model to explain the levels to the client to better describe how it works. It was rough and ready, but it worked perfectly. I love this, like, this is why I also think we gelled. This hacky mentality of, okay, how do we take something that's very complex and explain it in a way, and we're not going to spend whatever it is to get a model. Because one of the other consultants years before had done a beautiful model, and it was stunning. But it must have cost, what do you reckon, 100,000?
Models alone cost so much money.
So we did the model, the presentation, and worked so hard on it. Then do you remember we all went over on the tube and you were carrying this little model? I was so happy, and we went in and pitched. It was the whole boardroom explaining it. We cared and wanted to do kick-ass job.
It was the station that was critical, because they didn't have step-free access to the museum.
Issue,
that was kind of like #1 priority. Levels really became a key feature for the scheme.
If you go to the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, or the V&A new entrance, you arrive on this corner called Exhibition Corner. It is a nightmare from a wayfinding perspective. It's on a main road, and it was almost like, how do we work with that level? You've got to filter people in, and the Natural History Museum did a lot of work on this around, like, how do we get people into the gardens?
Sarah, remember when we met up for lunch, we walked past Natural History Museum, and you're like, see that dinosaur? I worked on this. See that dinosaur coming out? It doesn't look like this now, though. His tail comes right out onto the right?
And this is, I mean, God love a render versus then, like, what happens, right? If you go to the next one, that's like Dippy in the garden. And obviously, as things move through the different kind of stages, it changes. And what I love is Dippy's always been at the heart of it.
I remember part of the feasibility report was the whole Instagram thing. I remember saying people can take a selfie with Dippy now, but it's just that Instagram was taking off. So,
and you were there being like, if we can get it in a way where you take the selfie with the dinosaur, and I forgot about that. And this is why, like, we were such a good team at Mace. It's just like coming up, you know, just different kind of ideas. Another thing we never expect to do is in the top photo. I didn't do this. I didn't do the lift, to be really clear. But one of the tasks was to work out how this thing's going to be cast, who's going to cast it, get a cost for the cast, working with the QS. And you need to work out logistically, how are you going to get it down? At the time, the maker was in Scotland. Ship it down, like, in one piece or different pieces, and then crucially, how to crane it in from Exhibition Corner. How are you going to crane it in, and how are you going to shut down the area without mugging off the V&A, the Design Museum, and taking out, you know, and not killing a tourist, of which there are thousands of around that area. I thought it was such a niche, lovely thing to solve. You know, we talk about this all the time with everyone around in the industry. No day, God bless it, is the same. How many times are you going to work out how to crane a dinosaur into a garden? I'm like, happy days.
Such an iconic project,
And then what is often forgotten, the Western Gardens. The Natural History Museum is actually divided into 2 in bits in the garden. The East Gardens, which is what we've just been looking at, which is where Dippy is, and that's where everyone kind of goes. But there's also the Western Gardens, which is what we're looking at now. I'll be honest, I wasn't aware this was here. And I think most people aren't. It was very kind of unloved, minus the museum would put on good educational workshops and days around that. Are really amazing local communities that do a lot of stuff in the gardens. But tourist-wise and as an attraction, it was just dead space.
Even before it was developed, it was an amazing, beautiful space that just wasn't known. But this year was really beautiful. I haven't been there yet.
It's worth a look. It's a lovely area in central London, which most people don't know about. So if you're having a sandwich, fancy a break, I can't recommend. People talk about the beauty of the V&A Square, and I'm like, that's lovely, but are you also aware of this?
Definitely. Isn't that one of the amazing things about construction? We are literally creating spaces, whether that's an office or an outdoor space like this, where people can bring sandwiches and have a moment of peace and quiet. I think sometimes that a bit of a zoom out on what we're actually doing here, and a reminder that we are building our environment. There's something amazing about that.
Totally agree.
Should we move to the next slide?
Do you want to explain this one?
This is the ramp we discussed that would come out from the tube level to the entrance eventually in the Natural History Museum.
Just on that, those that haven't been, there's multiple ways to get to this museum. What Natural History Museum has shared with the V&A is you can get, TFL has a tunnel that you can kind of cut round to and walk underneath to get there.
Yeah, almost like direct access.
Yeah.
You don't have to come out of the station and then across the road. I think this suggestion was from Joe. And for those who can't see on the screen, it's the sedimentary rock layers throughout the history of time. 10,000 BC being in there, and then 150,000 BC being even further back. This came our feasibility stage to link the Natural History Museum. It looks brilliant. It looks so, so beautiful. I believe it really did meet what that whole Natural History Museum team wanted, and that was to get their mission across to the public even before they'd stepped through the doors. I was really happy to see this in the end.
Inspiring the future geotechnical
Yeah.
engineers and geologists.
So we're moving on to something quite
Yes.
different. So I guess for those listening, I'm going to give a brief description of what we're looking at and then which project this relates to.
What we have is Meta's Fit Out, which was my first project with ISG. As I said, I interviewed with ISG 3 times because it was a conscious decision to move into Fit Out. I'd done shell and core work with Mace before that and spent probably 3-4 years at Battersea Power Station. And I was like, oh, I think I need to actually see a finished product a bit quicker. That's the beauty of Fit Out. I think you've got projects varying from 6 months to a year. And this was my first project, and it was amazing because I'd never done Fit Out before. I've never worked with those nice final finishes you see, such as carpets and joinery. And it was fantastic. It was a small team going from 150 people on Battersea to 30.
Amazing. I'd love to talk about that a bit more, but just a quick aside. My husband Ricky worked on Battersea for Mace. Retail fit out after you'd finished up by the sounds of the timeline. But yeah, I'm sure you know some of the same people.
So yeah, it was a really nice project, and this was all Douglas fir. It was also coming out at the back end of COVID. So that was interesting. We were already having supply chain issues with the Douglas fir. So it was really challenging in that way. And as you can see, there was a lot
There's a lot of it.
Yeah, so I believe it was around 12 floors. And I think this picture on the left is across maybe 6 floors in the atrium. In Fit Out projects, the staircase is the pride and joy of the space.
Yeah.
So the staircase was really, really awesome to work on. And on the next slide, this was really cool piece to work on. It was kind of like a mini project almost, because that was done with external artists. I love working with creatives. It's very different to kind of the corporate environment, so I just lap it up. That was the art installation at the back of the offices. And yeah, it was a really awesome project to work with. It was my second company as well. And it was nice to see different ways that ISG did things compared to Mace, some better, some worse. Bringing in skills that I learned from Mace to the gaps I saw at ISG was really nice. But no, like I said, ISG have done so many incredible Fit Out projects.
But Fit Out, it's fast paced, it's fun to
Yes.
work in, there's lots of details to think about, there's lots of different contractors working closely with each other. You really have to think about the finish, of course, because this is the finished product. I personally love it. Not everyone does. Fit Out seems to be quite a love or hate thing. A lot of people are like, too much detail, too many people, too much happening at once. For you, do you feel like you've done Fit Out, had the experience? Is that your place in construction? Do you have a special feel for it, or not so much?
Fit Out, I think, is way harder than shell and core. I was losing sleep over millimeters. Oh my God, is this blind 2 mil too wide? In shell and core, not only do you have the program to absorb mistakes, but it's also not a finished product.
You don't see the building come alive, and I think Fit Out, you see it gain its kind of its personality, it comes to life, and then God bless handover as well. And then it's basically like how it's going to be used and how it's going to function.
You get to see the creativity really start to come in, you know, especially if you come through to kind of Cat B Fit Out, or you've got this Cat B Plus, or this beautiful background with the artwork that we're looking at here.
And this is a beautiful.
It would have been a delight to see that through to completion.
You can see that joinery table reception desk. We have tailor-made joinery. One thing that was amazing about Fit Out is just how bloody incredible the supply chain are. And I've always said this, the supply chain make me look good. You know, if they're doing well, it makes me look good to my bosses, especially joinery contractors. Their drawings are incredible, skillful in what they produce. And that was one real big delight of working with such amazing subcontractors.
This budget did not translate to healthcare reception desk, just so you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You didn't have a big feature reception desk, no big slab of marble on it or bronze details.
No.
Yeah, definitely the supply chain are not always respected maybe as much as they could be for the kind of work that they can come in and do. I was taught really early on, actually by my husband, because I worked my first construction job with him in Australia about 11 years ago. He was like, you've got to speak to the guys on the ground that really have the detail. If you're not speaking to them and respecting their knowledge, they will teach you. Like, get it from them if you don't know. You have to have that relationship. He was telling me that, and then we did fly and fly out, and I would go to the wet mess, and the guys would come up to me and say, I love working with Ricky. He's an amazing engineer. There's mutual respect, and it helps get the job done and overcome anything that would come up. I have a deep craving to see more collaboration and more of that kind of respect that you're giving there, Ozzy, to our supply chain and various people we work with throughout construction.
Yeah. And I think, not to go back to ISG, but especially I think of everything that's happened, my biggest sympathies to all the employees. I have no idea the impact on the supply chain. They are brilliant. Every subcontractor I've worked with is fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. This was a real career kickoff for you coming onto Meta. That sense of it felt like it wasn't obviously the start of your career, but you have the sense of coming into your own a little bit more maybe with it. Like, why did it feel like?
I think sometimes if you're the grad, you can always be seen as the grad. And I think because it was a conscious decision for me to be like, no, I want to go to fit out and I want to go to ISG. That ownership that I kind of took over my career was really nice. And to kind of not be a fresh university graduate, that's why it felt like a turning point for me.
Sarah, how's it been for you to watch Ozzy through to where she is today?
It's awesome.
Aww.
I love it. It's one of the best parts. You've gripped it, you've owned it, and you've gone from strength to strength.
Oh, that's too kind.
And I think one of your skills is, I don't know how to do it, but we're going to figure it out.
I love saying, I don't know. You know, they always say you're only as smart as the people in your phone book. I absolutely love being able to call people up and go, how do you do this? People also love being asked and teaching. One thing I tell myself is Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, so anything is possible. You know, I find some comfort in mediocre, average men doing well, because I'm like, if they've done it, I'm better than them. And I think the biggest difference from, I suppose, ISG and Mace was I feel like ISG had less red tape. I had a direct relationship with my director who would not only kind of enable me to do that, but also kind of encourage me to do it and really express his validation towards me on doing that as well. Whereas I wouldn't really get that face time, I don't think, in Mace, maybe a bigger beast. One of the things I was really proud of at Meta was we had all of these samples and it was coming to the end of the project. I'm not going to throw them in the bin. These are brilliant. And we're in King's Cross, right by Central St. Martin's. I donated all of those materials to Central St. Martin's, and as art students do, they created some really brilliant, fantastic things. Seeing in fit out tangible materials going into waste, that also for me sparked, okay, well, this is a problem that needs to be fixed. So how am I going to fix that? But it was through ISG, and I guess that relationship of the senior leadership kind of enabling me to do my own thing has allowed that to hopefully grow into something bigger. And that's why, in terms of what's next for construction, I do believe in the digital innovation of construction. I think it inspires people that it will get better. One of my friends who's a lawyer says that apparently construction is the second most paperwork heavy industry after law.
Yeah. Again, as we say, is there a better way? And like with the younger generation coming through, I think there is that push and it is happening. I personally would like it to happen a bit faster.
But also, I think in terms of like on-site technology as well is really exciting from a health and safety aspect, but also like program measuring aspect to make all that.
There is a problem in the industry around attracting people.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your view on this? Because you're obviously younger than I am.
Yeah.
This may come as a surprise.
Attracting people to the industry, high level, is working from home, right? How do you entice people when so many industries can offer you that working from home? That's competition one. Number two, and Sarah, you said it, like tech is so sexy. I don't know if construction ever will be.
My dream, I don't think I've admitted this, is to go back into construction.
Really?
I would love someone to give me a few billion and be like, you're going to be a main contractor and you do it totally differently. Paying people well, paying your supply chain on time,
yes,
embracing technology, creating offices that people want to come into. You mentioned ISG 2.0 and who's going to take that more dynamic, forward-thinking, younger workforce. Becketeria tried, it didn't work, but kudos for trying. They made different mistakes. That's a podcast in and of itself, but there's huge opportunity. There's enough kick-ass people in the industry.
We know so many cool people in construction who are really forward thinking. People like Jack from Havio, Steve Kerslake from Construction Sport, our sponsor, these kind of various people who I think could contribute a lot to coming in and going, rip up the rule book.
Imagine, because we had it on a really small level where it felt like Dream Team was a natural history museum. But imagine that at scale.
Can I be your supply chain manager? I'm in.
Again,
I don't know where you're getting the money from, but I'm doing it.
I was thinking of Matt Blowers in his final town halls. He was asked, what is your biggest frustration or biggest challenge in your day-to-day job? His answer was, we are still making the same mistakes I saw 25 years ago. That has stuck with me so badly. That's not right. How many industries can say they're doing things the same way they were 25 years ago, or at least not in a more efficient, better way? I think that is the drive and the fuel, isn't it?
Our program is always so tight. Money is always so tight. How the heck are we going to hit this? You're kind of in the scarcity of like always seeming to try to hit a program and hit a budget that are really hard to hit. Let's just do what's tried and tested. We don't have room to muck around and get it wrong. When you're trying to achieve difficult measures, which seems to be something that is always there within construction because of the way that we do money and so on, that it becomes harder to innovate because if we get it wrong and then we're going to fail hitting these markers and these measures. For true innovation to really start to come in, some of that somehow has to be loosened up. The penalty for failing isn't massive liquidated damages, but there's an opportunity to fail and maybe get it wrong and then maybe get it right and take that forward on the next projects.
As well as not give lowest price wins. And actually, what is actually a true cost for this project?
And if we hit the program, which we never do,
never.
I'm with you, Ozzy.
That's because the program's a lie. It's just a fabricated story for that, like a stupidly optimistic ending.
Yeah.
I sound really negative.
No, those things are valid frustrations, but that's what I sometimes find disheartening, to be like, what is the point if someone's just going to, what is the point in trying to be better if that isn't adding value?
It's interesting because then at that point, is it like if someone's listening and got a few billion they want to give us, like happy to give it a crack?
I'm like, let's start the main contractor. Let's do early contractor involvement. I'm in. You haven't asked me, Sarah. You might be like, I don't actually want to work with you, but I'm in.
Have you got a few billion, Eve?
No, I definitely don't. My parents are farmers in New Zealand. I don't have a casual few billion in the bank. I think that frustration, isn't it? Like, let's start from scratch. What could the industry be like? I think the supply chain would have to be a huge part of that. How early we enter into conversation with them, how much they're involved with design all the way through, and how much we respect what they have to say and treat them well as the men on the ground. There's a lot of disconnection from the actual guys coming in, traveling for hours and hours to get to work, maybe not having great time at home. It just always feels like we're forgetting about the people who are really building the projects. And if that was done better, we could see better outcomes across the board. I think we're going to have to do it, but I don't know how it's going to get funded. I'm with you, Sarah.
Launch them out to my investors. Turns out I'm doing this.
If anyone's listening and they want someone to do main contracting differently and they want to fund it.
It goes down even to the food that you eat on site. We've been in the arse end of nowhere, nothing around, and I've eaten the entire pack of digestives to keep me going. That's not sustainable. That is not a healthy diet. Construction Sport was talking about this last week, and I did a good post on the energy drinks. I've just been able to have the mess hall serving good food. I dream of this utopia around kind of doing it. I would love to have things like that on site. When I've gone into Google's offices, they're like, free the food on that. And you can ask what coffee you type of coffee you want. Do you want to work out how to put a Diplodocus dinosaur with this and take a selfie? Positive thing is that against technology is that you get to touch and see it's tangible. You can see it. That has a hard finish as well, which I think,
yes, it's one of the few careers that enables you to touch, see, live and breathe it, literally.
I think individual impact, who you are and what you bring to the team has an impact on the outcome in a way that not all jobs have that. It's purpose and being fulfilled. I think being able to come in because so many problems arise and help the team to navigate through that. I think that can be very exciting.
Mm.
Just before we wrap up, we're talking about what's next for the industry. What would
Mm,
we like
mm,
to see in a perfect world? A little bit about sustainability there and what we can do with waste. Very, very fresh with the news of ISG literally last week. So you're in that space of figuring out what is next for you. But what would you love to do?
Yeah. I do think in my hearts of hearts, and maybe this is being a daughter of immigrants and my dad running his own coffee shop business, that entrepreneurial owning your own business thing is just unfortunately in my blood. But I've always seen myself running my own thing. I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know at what stage in my life that will be. Again, I always feel drawn to founders. Sarah and I kind of reconnected when I saw Sarah was doing a talk, and I was like, "Hey, Sarah, we actually worked together. Do you remember me?"
Someone thought that was bloody staged, and I was like, no, genuinely, it caught me off by guard.
In my hearts of hearts, I do think I hopefully will set up my own venture. And I've been dabbling with the idea of what does a circular economy marketplace look for. Construction might be too big of a chunk to bite off, but maybe fit out, what does that look like? I can't give enough credit to the sustainability department at ISG. They were incredible people. I'm hoping to explore that. I don't know how anyone does a full-time job and a side hustle by any means, like complete
Wouldn't recommend
kudos
it.
for doing that. So I think that's kind of end goal. I'll let serendipity do its thing. In the meantime, I am really enjoying talking to friends from the industry and seeing what else is out there. What are the gaps? What am I not good at? Seeing how I can learn those better. I am excited. I'm quite enjoying this week off. I'm saying it's a week off. We'll see what happens.
People are interested in reaching out. How do they find you?
On LinkedIn, Ozge Aygunoglu. So it's quite a mouthful, but I'm sure you can copy and paste
We'll
it.
put it in the chat. Yeah.
That is probably the best way. I genuinely love to talk to anyone who's interested in kind of circular economy marketplace in construction, but also anyone who's working on exciting, cool things. I just find founders fascinating.
So you've got a whole raft of experience. Fit out,
Yeah.
taking your time to explore, but you've also done tech. You've done work with us.
Oh God,
you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that is true. What I really enjoyed about working with tech is like, oh my God, what I know isn't just standard information sometimes, which I was like, oh wow, I am useful in a way. So I'm trying to be more serendipitous. In my heart, I think there's a founder in here. Hopefully she'll go full steam
It
ahead.
makes sense. Definitely with those things in and kind of really attract us about other people. Often it's because it's something that we're keen to explore ourselves, isn't it? That's super cool. Won't lie to you, not the easiest path, but definitely rewarding. Let's wrap it up. Thank you, Ozzy. Lovely to have you on. Thank you for being our second guest on Hard Hat Heroines.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Hard Hat Heroines, project highlights from women in construction. We'd like to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Construction Sport, the charity Building Teams and Saving Lives, Centera Project Communication Software, quicker than emails, better than WhatsApp, less soul destroying than paper, and the Tender Trainers, teaching subcontractors how to tender. Subtract the stress, add the profit. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.